On today's episode of the Leadmore Podcast, you'll get me, the host, John T. Meyer. And I'm going to talk about something that I think is one of the most powerful forces of leverage for any leader to take advantage. On today's episode, we are going to talk about the topic of hiring a virtual assistant, a VA, if you've heard of that term before. So why do I say it's one of the most powerful? We talk about leverage, right? A simple machine, the form of a lever, where thanks to that lever, you can lift something 10, 20, 50 times bigger. I'm not saying a VA will 50x your productivity, but at minimum, it'll 2x your productivity. And I'm going to convince you why today. So the first time I heard about the concept of a virtual assistant was in maybe right out of college. I think it was the first year out of college that I read the book, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Revolutionary book. It changed the way many people think about work, think about growing their businesses, entrepreneurs, CEOs, leaders. And I remember one thing that stuck with me in that particular book, when you hear the term virtual assistant, it really just means not with you in the office. And now in a remote world that we live in post-COVID, it's almost just like an assistant, right? So many people work remotely anyway. But I remember Tim talking in that book about one of the things that's really good, hiring a virtual assistant in the offshore context, Philippines, India, wherever it might be. It forces you to create better systems and processes, and it forces you to learn how to give instructions, like write instructions and give instructions in a 5th grade reading level. And that's not because they can't understand it. In fact, it's the opposite. Their English, the people I've worked with and we'll talk about today, is incredibly effective. But it's because that's how all humans should give instructions. We all should give instructions at that 5th grade level. And so that's the first time I ever heard of the concept of a VA. I was working a corporate job right out of college. And then it wasn't until, if that was 2008, probably 10 years later, where Lemonly posted a job. It was a split job, half-time office manager, take care of the office, make sure the fridge is stocked, we pay the bills, we drop off the checks, and an executive assistant where we posted that job. It was a 15-hour-a-week job. I could do a whole other episode about this, the importance of company culture and building an employer brand. That's for another episode. A 15-hour-a-week job, $20 an hour. We had 53 people apply for that job just here in Sioux Falls for Lemonly at that time. So I'd finally convinced myself it was time to hire an assistant, both for the office and for myself. And where I'd like to start today, I don't have a fancy framework today, but I'll walk you through a few models that kind of build up the case on why, if you're a leader, I think you should consider hiring an EA, executive assistant, or a VA, virtual assistant. And so around that time, I remember hearing this concept of the $10,000, $100,000, $1,000 task, right? And basically the idea was, if you are writing a check to pay a bill, if you are grabbing said check from client and walking it across the street to the bank to deposit it, which I did all the time. Part of me just liked that, the ability of knowing we were making money and depositing the check. But those are $10 tasks, right? Anybody can do them. They can be done while doing other things, errands. They're just low value $10 tasks. And that's not in a disrespectful way. But as you move up the chain, a $100 task at that time, as me, for CEO of Lemonly, was probably processing my email, right? Like going through the email, responding to clients, maybe thinking about a Google Doc process or something I had to create or document. But then a $1,000 task as the CEO of Lemonly for me was being on a sales call where we were selling potentially $10, $15, $25, $50,000 of work, giving a presentation at a conference, or even a presentation internally for the 20 employees. That's really important time, right? Those are $1,000 tasks. And the simple concept of the 10, 100, 1,000 is, what is your hourly rate worth, right? Or you might have heard this concept. Here it is. Your buyback rate. Really great book from Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time. What's your time worth is the simple idea. And so that kind of flipped my switch. And I was like, I need to spend as much time as I can on a $1,000 task. I did a decent amount of stuff probably at a $100 task, but I'm going to get rid of $10 tasks. And that simple framework, 10, 100, 1,000, is how I was like, bingo. it's time to hire somebody to help. We posted that job, 53 applicants. We ended up with Emily. She's fantastic. She still works there today. I don't work at Emily anymore. She still does, 6 years later. And it's just been a game changer. It was a game changer for me. I think it's been huge for the company, right? Creating that leverage, finding your hourly rate and working yourself up that chain, really thinking about your buyback, your time. The reason partly why I wanted to record this episode, this solo episode, is I think especially here in the Midwest, there's a lot of belief blockers. There's a lot of limiting beliefs on, well, I can't hire somebody else to pay my bills. I can't hire I can mow my own lawn, right? I talked about this on the episode recently with Rebecca Scott, right? There's probably some kid down the street who wants to mow your lawn. Give him 10, 20 bucks, whatever the going rate is these days, right? And so work past these belief blockers. And sometimes you're not just creating leverage on eliminating $10 tasks so you can do $1,000 tasks. Sometimes you're willing to pay $20 an hour, $10 an hour to spend time with your family, to prioritize your health and go for a run, go to the gym, to go on a date with your wife, right? It's the same thing we do when we hire a babysitter to watch our kids, right? Creating that leverage, buying back your time to do things that are most valuable to you. So I want to push on that mindset and push on some of those beliefs that a lot of people have. So the other framework that really helped me get to this realization, the one I work now as a coach at Leadmore, the one I worked with my founders, is this idea of the energy audit. Simple exercise you can do: draw a line down the center of a piece of paper. Just grab a sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle. On the right side, put plus at the top. The left side, put minus. And what we're going to do is we're going to think of the tasks that we do, how we spend our time, audit sort of the way we spend our time at work and in our life personally, and all the things that give you energy, right? When you finish them, they really get you excited. They fuel you up. You get energy. Put those things in that plus column. Just write down those tasks. Good example for me is I love presenting. I love creating content, recording a podcast. I could probably do a 2-hour podcast. Would I be physically tired? Yeah, my voice might be tired, but I would have a lot of energy, right? That's a plus. Now in the minus column, it's things like, for me, doing accounting or scheduling a lot of future calendar meetings, booking appointments. Let's see, what else don't I like to do? I don't really like to process documents, create systems and processes. I like to think about an ideal state, but then have somebody help kind of execute and build that out, right? If you're familiar with the concept of EOS or traction, I'm the classic visionary. I need that integrator to help me. And so this isn't a bad thing. What you're doing is you're just acknowledging what gives you energy, what drains you energy. Simple as that. This doesn't mean that you're never going to do anything on this side again, but let's be aware. And how do we spend more time in the plus and less in the minus? So then what I do with my founders is, okay, we got our plus list. Let's look at that, think about that. Let's do more. Now let's push it off to the side. Let's take a look at the minus list and how do we get rid of some of those things? And what I suggest is D, E, or A. That means we could delegate those tasks to another team member if you have a team. If you're a solopreneur, if you're the only person in your business, those are a lot of people that I work with. This is where the VA comes in. We could delegate there. The E is we could eliminate some of those tasks. And I love this one. At Lemonly, sometimes if a person would leave the company, we might just wait a couple of weeks and just kind of see what happens. Where is the biggest pain? Sometimes we just stop doing things and you realize maybe we didn't need to do that. Maybe that Thursday meeting for an hour every Tuesday, every Thursday at 4:00, whatever, doesn't need to happen. And then the third, and this one's pretty exciting in today's world, is we automate that task. So whether it be software, connecting two tools through Zapier, or of course AI that everyone's talking about, let's automate that thing. And maybe we don't need to do that. We could just repeat it. Now, also in that delegate bucket, I hate doing accounting. Well, guess what? There are accountants. There's a whole industry, CPAs, bookkeepers. There's software companies now too that do that. In the early days of my first journey as an entrepreneur at 9Clouds, I balanced the books and I was always 4 or 5 months behind, and I'm 95% sure they weren't right. That's a great example of a D. Delegate that, get rid of it. So that's the energy audit, right? We're taking a look at the tasks. What do we love doing? What do we hate doing? Or at least what drains our energy? How do we get rid of it? So now you have this sort of interesting 2 frameworks. We know what we love to do. We know what we don't love to do. we've also sort of calculated what is our time worth. And now this is where you insert creating that leverage, hiring a VA, hiring an EA. And I think part of the misnomer is just like, where do I start? Where do I begin? How do I find these people? How much do I pay them? So let me tell you about my journey. After Emily, I sold the company. Emily left, and I really missed having that person, right? You kind of grow a little bit reliant and also like probably a little spoiled of the things you don't like to do anymore. And so eventually I found that person again. I used a website called supportshepherd.com. There's so many different websites like this. And I've hired a full-time assistant in the Philippines, 40 hours a week for $1,200 a month. So that ends up being, roughly 40, 80, 160 hours a week for $1,200. Now, let me say, Support Shepherd recommended that salary. They had varying salaries depending on the experience of the person and what they were looking for and their different skill sets. So this is like a salary that they're excited about and happy to do. I think some of the belief blockers are like, that's just not fair. You can't do that. It's not a livable wage. Well, it is in that part of the world or that country. So my virtual assistant, Joanne, she's phenomenal, speaks incredible English, probably reads and writes, or at least writes, I should say, better than many people who might work at your company today. She's fantastic. And also what surprised me is she works on US Central Time. And having run a company that had remote employees, we had remote employees from Vancouver to Miami to Serbia. I was like, hey, if we just have a couple hours to overlap, I'm good with that. And you can kind of work your schedule. And she said, no, my body clock is on Central Time. I'd like to work Central Time. Can we just do that? And I said, okay. And so game on. Now I have this person 40 hours a week to help me. And it feels like I'm cloning myself, really. It feels like we're a team now. I get to go back to building a team, and we have our Monday morning call as the team as we go through things, and we have systems and processes. We both work in our zone of genius. So this type of resource exists all over, right? You can do a Support Shepherd to the Philippines. There's lots of people in India that do this. There are companies right here in America, right? You can do, there's one company I know that hires military spouses, men or women who are home and maybe looking for sort of a flexible job, flexible hours. There are people right here in South Dakota that fractionalize their time as a virtual assistant or an executive assistant. So the point I'm trying to make is if you are a leader, you're feeling overwhelmed, you wear a lot of hats, and there's a lot of things you don't want to do, there's help out there. You'd be silly not to take advantage of it. So there's all sorts of resources in terms of different price points you want to spend, how much time you need somebody, and the different skills that you do. Fast forward today here, at the end of April 2024, I currently employ 5 offshore resources and then myself building Leadmore. So Joanne, my virtual assistant. And then I believe in this so much that I've hired 2 other virtual assistants that I then essentially loan or lease out to the coaches, the CEOs that I coach, the founders and entrepreneurs that I coach, because I believe so much in this power, in this leverage, that I told them they need to do it too. So we hired those 2 VAs, cut up their time, and offer it to these other entrepreneurs. So that's 3. Then I employ 2 video editors. So this doesn't just have to be a virtual assistant. They can do other things too, create content, marketing, edit videos. We create podcast content. We create long form videos on YouTube. We cut it up into clips and reels on social media. And they're very incredibly talented and ready to work. And so the point here is that get your wheels thinking in that minus column of things you don't want to do or things you might need help on, or even just other ways to buy back your time and do more high value tasks and leverage some of those resources. So I want to tell you about something exciting. That's why I wanted to do this solo episode, because I believe in so much in this power. And it's one of the things I get some of the questions asked about a lot. Wait, you do what? They live where? How much does that cost? They also do what? Like, you didn't send that email to me? You didn't book that calendar invite for this coffee meeting? And people sort of perk up and ask me a lot of questions. So I wanted to kind of break down just a tip of sort of what I do and the power of that. If your wheels aren't spinning yet, you can think about, you could even build businesses on the back of this. And I haven't even gotten into the personal side of things, right? The idea of sort of booking things for your family, or executive assistants will buy gifts or plan trips, or all these other things open up as potential opportunities. So now what? So I want to tell you about something exciting that I'm building. I'm building a how to use a VA course through Leadmore, because I got so many questions about this that I decided, you know what, I'm going to build a course on this exact topic. It's coming out next month, May 2024. And the idea is we're going to go through first how to think about whether or not you need a VA, how to get ready for it mentally, how to think about what tasks are the right tasks, what can they do, when can they do that, how can they do that. That's sort of the first thing, is you have to get your mind right that you're ready to do this, make the investment. Then how to hire a VA, so that's job description. That's thinking through your budget, thinking through where do we go, what are the websites from. The spectrum is from offshore, $1,000 a month, to employee, 5,000. I mean, you even have executive assistants that probably make $10,000 a month, right? Like, the spectrum is wide. So how much do you want to spend? How many hours do you need them full time, all the way down to like 10 hours? One cool aspect I put into our course is I surveyed I think I have about 20 entrepreneurs who have taken this survey, and asked them, these are entrepreneurs who already have VAs, how do you use your VA? How much do you spend on that person? How many hours do they work? What tasks do they do? Because that's one of the biggest ones is, I don't think I have 10 hours a week. Certainly don't have 20 hours a week. What could they possibly do? And we go through the tasks that these entrepreneurs are currently using. And so that's the second module of how to hire that person. And then, of course, third module, how do I work with them? Now what? Now what that we hired that person? And I'm going to unpack, I have templates for all this that you'll get in my daily stand-up that Joanne and I do every day, how we plan my day, lay out the perfect week so she knows exactly where to schedule meetings, how to put them, where to put them, when to put them. We have our end-of-day wrap-up process. We have like our monthly checklist. We have email templates that we do for clients, email templates for customers. She runs my online community for Leadmore. So all these things that we're building, what we call the playbook. And so you'll also get access to the VA playbook, all the templates, all the documents that you can use, customize for your own self, and then use once you hire a VA. So I'll put this in the show notes, but if you have any questions, you can go to howtova.com and sign up. This is going to be a $300 course, $297. You buy it once. All the videos, all the resources, all the documents are there for you. We'll have office hours for 4 weeks in May and into June, and you can unlock and create some leverage and start working with somebody today. So howtova.com to unlock the power of a virtual assistant. Okay, that's this week's episode of the Leadmore Podcast. Thanks for always listening. Of course, you can find the Leadmore Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, on Apple, on Spotify. Go there, give us a rating if you can. And also, if you haven't, you might also be watching this. Currently, the Leadmore Podcast, of course, now is also in video format, and you can go to youtube.com/John T. Meyer _ and subscribe and watch all the videos that I put out on how to grow your business, and as well as future Leadmore Podcast. So thanks. And as always, take care and be well.